Hello world, I'm sitting here with a very special guest, Janine Shepherd. Hello Janine.
G'day James.
We've got two Australians in the house. We thought that we'd do very much an impromptu conversation just to chat about all things success and mindset and positive energy and anything else that anyone who has any questions along the way might ask. So for those who don't know Janine, she is the very first story of Think and Grow Rich, the legacy. Do you want to fill people in on a little bit about your background?
Sure, well, for a lot of the Aussies that are listening, they probably know my story. For those that aren't familiar with it, I was an athlete going to the Olympics when I suffered a life-threatening injury back in 1986. I had what I call a death experience. I left my body. I suffered multiple injuries. I broke my neck and my back in 6 places, 5 ribs, my arm, collarbone, blood loss. It's a never-ending list. You've
been through a lot, yeah.
And spent 6 months in a spinal ward, got out in a wheelchair, and was told that I'd never be able to do anything again. I wouldn't walk. Everything that I'd worked for my entire life was over, and it was pretty gloomy outlook. And then I saw an aeroplane fly overhead, and remarkably, I thought, well, that's it. If I can't walk, I'll fly. So it's a very long story, which I've written about extensively. But basically, I went on and became a pilot, even though I am a walking paraplegic. And I became a commercial pilot and an aerobatics flying instructor. Was told I'd never have kids, had 3 kids.
TED Talk, 2 million views. A Goldcast video with 15 million views. What about... So a lot of people, we have adversity. Every one of us has adversity in our own life. But what about, it's rarely, it might be a relationship breakup or losing a job or something like that. It is rarely an immense physical trauma or some type of really severe medical diagnosis. So what do you think about what people could learn most from your story about how to face adversity when inevitably it strikes for all of us?
Yeah, I mean, that's just, it's a given. And I think what I tell people and teach people in my keynote presentations and my books is that, you know, one of the most important lessons that I've lived with my whole life is the mindset I developed as a young athlete, which was that I learned to love the hills. And the hills, you know, of course, we all face hills, not just real hills, but the invisible hills. They're the challenges we face in life, the things that we'd rather not have. But loving the hills is a mindset. It's a way of shifting. It's a way of reframing anything that happens in life. So we understand that the hills, firstly, are there for all of us. They're meant to be there. And once we accept and see that hills are part of life, then the fact that life has hills doesn't actually matter anymore. And that's the key. It's not just taking on the hills, but learning to love them. And many of, I guess many of the viewers here may have read Scott Peck's The Road Less Traveled, which he says it this way. He says life is difficult, but once you accept that it's difficult, then it's no longer difficult anymore. So I think, you know, if we can look at every challenge in life as a hill that's been specifically orchestrated for our own spiritual growth, then, you know, we have a different mindset.
So facing adversity is actually an opportunity to prove how badly you want something rather than letting it become permanent defeat in your own life?
Yeah, I mean, it's there for a reason. We tend to avoid those things because, you know, we fear what's on the other side. But if we actually turn and face the hills and realise that they're our own personal challenges, then we realise that there is actually nothing to fear.
What about the role of other people in this whole journey of getting everything? Like as an athlete, you lost your entire identity and of course the immense physical trauma which you spoke about earlier. What about and while you have to ultimately walk that path alone, literally learning to walk again for the second time, what was the role of other people in stepping into this new life?
Well, you're right. Ultimately, you know, we are doing it on our own. But of course, for me, you know, it was teamwork from the very get-go, from the very first responder at the scene of my accident that, you know, acted in a way that actually saved my life. Made the decisions to, you know, call the helicopter to get the blood flown up, to the doctors and the nurses that cared for me in hospital, to the physios and everyone, you know, the support I had from family, friends, particularly my parents. You know, it's a team effort. So it's been incredibly important to me, and it's also highlighted how interconnected we all are. and that you really, in the words of Zig Ziglar, you can have anything you want if you help someone else get what they want.
What advice do you give to people around having someone who might have an idea for their life, but then something comes out of left field, and before you know it, they're faced with I guess a mindset where they feel like they're not sure what's next, or they have this darkness, or they're treading water, or they just have this feeling like they're not living their own life?
You know, it's interesting because I did a podcast. I recorded a podcast this morning with the TED Radio Hour for anyone that is a fan of that podcast, one of the biggest podcasts in the world. And we actually talked about that. The theme of this podcast was the person you become. So it was all about how we have, we're born with this identity and who we think we are. And then when things happen, particularly in my case, I thought that my strength was in my body. And so it doesn't have to be physical trauma, but anything that happens that really threatens, how we think our life is supposed to look, how do we deal with that? And so my advice to people is just learn to let go. Life is about loosening our grip on the way we think things are supposed to be. And the reason we suffer and the reason we experience pain in life is when we hold on too tightly to things because we think that's the way it's supposed to be. Where in fact, life has other plans for us, and it's only when we let go that we realise, what we're capable of. And I say we don't realise how strong we are until being strong is the only choice we have.
And what about, great advice, great words. What about when, I guess so many people, they look up to people who are in a position of influence or authority, or who are perceived to have made it. But I guess some of the things that we were talking about even earlier today was around that no one really has it figured out. They're just making the best of every single day. Have you had that in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, life is a mystery. And, I think we often give away our power by thinking that everybody else has got it together or someone else has got the answer. And I think, we need to really go back into that sort of silent space where we listen to the inner voice, the whispers from the universe, because we all actually know what's best for ourselves. We actually have the answers.
Yeah, you just got to try and tap back into your inner voice and block out the...
Which is challenging because we live in a world that's so noisy. How do we sort of quieten down and go back and really trust our own inner wisdom? Because we've all got it.
For sure. And who inspires you the most these days?
Gosh, so many of the ordinary people inspire me. People that inspire me, people that I spent time in hospital with. My kids inspire me. Just you inspire me, James.
Thank you, Janine.
Yeah.
I have to pay her after this.
Yeah. Well, you inspire me because for a lot of people out there would know that we're two Aussies living in America. You're living in LA. I'm living in a crazy part of the world in Wyoming.
Bears and snow.
We stick together, us Aussies. And in fact, thank you very much for my cup of tea.
No worries.
It's hard to get a good cup of tea. So, what about, and I'm just thrilled that the way we were brought together and that we've become such great friends through this amazing book. What are some of the great takeaways that you've got from the people that you've met and the lessons that you've learned from writing this book?
I think one of the biggest is the unwavering self-belief that all the people in this book have. And actually one specific example I like about you, it was after that moment when you said, if I can't walk, I'll fly. And then you got clear on what you wanted. That was to be a pilot, but you needed to obviously learn to walk again so you would pass the pilot physical. So you had that unwavering self-belief even when the universe had sent you a bit of a meteorite, or certainly a very big detour, that perhaps that wasn't the athletic journey and the aspirations that you had for 2 decades of your life up until that point. But everyone in this book, from Grant Cardone, who was using drugs every day from the ages of 15 to 25, he was of the belief that just because you had a wrong turn in your life, that doesn't mean that you can't turn around and go back. He was at a treatment facility at rehab, and they wanted him to keep using just a different type of drug and told him to give up any grandiose dreams or ambitions he had. But Grant was of the belief that he didn't want to be labelled as a lifetime drug addict forever, so he got to work on building up his own dreams. There's the story of Lewis Howes, who was broke at 6'4", living on his sister's couch and in debt, how he was able to turn all that around within 6 years as well. So I think as long as people remember that the most important opinion is how you feel about yourself. That's the most important opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think it's great that these these universal principles now that you've been able to bring that to a new generation of people. And, you know, let's talk a little bit about the name of the book and the whole word rich, because I know that, you know, I think that there's a, you know, perception that rich just is purely about money. And to me, it's something much bigger than that. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. What's your definition of rich?
I think it's rich rich and abundant in experience, life experience. That's what rich is
I like
to me.
that. Yeah. And there is a misconception about Think and Grow Rich, where a lot of people, I find, particularly in America, who think that you need to have a Ferrari, and as soon as you have that, the world is your oyster and no more problems. But from all the people who I've interviewed in Think and Grow Rich, the legacy, it's being rich in relationships, it's being rich in love and gratitude, regardless of where you are in life, having the gratitude for being where you are and the people you have in your life, while you put a plan in place to take it to that next level. And the whole idea of Think and Grow Rich is that you think positive thoughts and then you have a positive life. But if you're not thinking positive and you don't live with intent and live with passion, live with purpose, you're reacting to the day. And before you know it, you start to fall victim to a lot of these other things that, I guess, like a garden with weeds, if you didn't take the time to properly tend to it, that you would have all these weeds slowly creeping up. But if you look after your financial health, your physical health, your mental health, that over time you can start to enjoy those rewards. But a lot of what I talk about in my speeches, as you know, is the whole idea of win the day. Have you got a similar focus around what your outlook is for daily productivity?
Well, I'm probably, you know, not as organised as you, James. I feel. You know, every day for me, because I'm travelling so much, you know, I think I live out of a suitcase, and I'm just on my way to Australia and China and then back to Australia again. And I've just been all around America right now. So every day is different. But to me, it's about, no matter what happens in life, no matter what happens during the day, if you can at the end of the day say, you know, what was the gift in this, and practice gratitude. For me, that's, you know, one of the greatest tools that we can take away from all of this, and I think everyone in this book would agree, is that at the end of the day, if you can, you know, think about your day and give thanks, because you're never going to have that day again. You're never going to have this moment again. So give thanks. I mean, I actually have a practice every morning that I give grace. So I get up in the morning and I think about my day, and I take some quiet time, and I think of 3 things, or actually physically name 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I do that at the end of the day too.
So eyes closed, just having a think about...
I usually, sometimes I write it down, sometimes I just speak it out aloud. Sometimes before I even get out of bed in the morning, I think about the little things. I mean, we tend to take things for granted.
Yeah.
I think we just spoke about that before. I said I was coming here, I was catching an Uber, and there's a whole line of people with their phones. And I thought, this is incredible. You know, we can just pick up a phone and call a car to come and pick us up. You know, this is amazing. Life is extraordinary. And how often do we really remind ourselves just how incredible it is?
Take a moment to enjoy it.
It's so easy to just take things for granted. We turn a tap on and water comes out. Oh yeah, you know, we should every day be going, this is amazing.
Absolutely. And there's something that I've been using which has really helped me a lot, called the 5-minute journal, where you wake up and...
I love that.
It's great. If you look at my Instagram, every single day I do an Instagram story of the page. It starts off with a motivational quote, and then you write down 3 things that you're grateful for. Could be anything. And then it's 3 things that would make today great. And as the day progresses, I tell you what, those 3 things that you said would make today great, they nag away at your brain until they're accomplished. So I guess it's like giving a bit of a leg up to the angel on your shoulder who keeps saying, do this before you do something else.
And it's not only that, it actually changes your brain. I mean, science tells us that. It's you know, we can talk about neuroplasticity and rewiring our brain, and that's what gratitude does.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something that I did. I laid, you know, paralysed in a spinal ward for 6 months, but I was so grateful. I was grateful to the people that came in to visit me, my friends, my family, day after day after day, to the nurses and the doctors that cared for me and looked after me with compassion and love. And, you know, really that's what enabled me to lie there flat on my back for almost 6 months.
Yeah. And another important part of gratitude as well is it's very difficult to be angry and frustrated at the same time as you're giving thanks for something great in your life.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's a theme, as I've read through these stories in your book, James. I mean, it's a theme that you know, everyone, successful person would say that, you know, they look back and they give thanks for everything. And I think the key here is not just to give thanks for the good things, but to give thanks for the challenges as well, because that's what life is about. It's about embracing it all, loving it all, the joy, the joyful times, as well as the painful. The hills. Love the hills.
Couldn't agree more. I was going to ask you for a final thought before we wrap it up, but I think that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
And I suppose, most people in life, they might feel that deep down they have an idea of what it takes for them to get out of their comfort zone, rather than wanting to sit on the couch and watch television. Is there maybe an hour or something each day that they can attribute to their version of loving the hills and getting out of their comfort zone in the interests of the greater good?
Yeah, I think I'm a great fan of getting out of your comfort zone. I think I do it every day. Every time I walk on stage, you know, I'm challenging myself, whether it's, going to China to speak to a few hundred people over there, to a place I've never been before. I'm always pushing myself and challenging myself to sort of do something that makes me feel slightly uncomfortable, because I know that when I do that, I'm growing, I'm expanding, and I mean, to me, that's what makes life rich.
Fantastic. If you've got any questions, we haven't had a chance to really look at any comments, but you can always just write them in the comments or send either of us an email, and we'll make sure they get answered and responded to. We have to go because Janine actually has a plane to catch.
I do. I've got a couple.
But thank you very much, Janine,
thanks
for everything. And grab a copy of Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy if you haven't already, and Janine Shepherd's book, Defiant.
See you guys.